In the spring of 2017, while enrolled in the psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy and a research certificate program at California Institute of Integral Studies, I met Alan Cooey Davis, a researcher at Johns Hopkins University. Alan recruited a small team of us to analyze the results of 2 surveys asking about the advantages and drawbacks of utilizing 5-MeO-DMT compared to other psychedelic substances. So just briefly, what is 5? 5-methoxy-N,N-dimethyltryptamine, or 5-MeO-DMT, is a psychedelic tryptamine found both in the natural world and is also synthetically produced. It was experimented with entirely legally in 2011, when it was then found out and placed on the DEA's controlled substance list as a Schedule I drug. Let's see. Is it gonna go? There we go. So as the team and I read through 800 plus surveys, we were faced with a true challenge. How do we quantify the ineffable? We were tasked with identifying common themes that might present themselves throughout the many utterances read from the surveys. On this slide, maybe, you might see, eventually, themes that emerged for both the advantages and drawbacks when answering the 2 survey questions, which specifically were, what do you see as the advantages of using 5-MeO-DMT compared with other psychedelic substances, and what do you see as the drawbacks of using 5-MeO-DMT compared to other psychedelic substances? Are you laughing? You're laughing at the themes? Right? More? Okay. So who responded to the survey? 2 groups were invited to participate, one being the general public and the other being a group who uses 5-MeO-DMT as a spiritual sacrament, which I will refer to as the Temple Group. An international survey of 5-MeO-DMT users was conducted with the general population, and with the Temple population, it was conducted solely within the United States. So as you can see up there, the general survey respondents, there were 515 participants and 362 participants for the Temple survey. And here are the results. So in the advantage section, the results from both, this will show the results from both the general and the Temple populations. For example, in the general population, 23% of all utterances were related to the mystical and spiritual experiences. People made comments such as, like a deep, deep meditation, or straight to one of the several ultimate states of consciousness. 14% of all utterances were related to the duration of action, so short duration, or they would just state something like quick. 13% of all utterances were related to cognitive experiences. People would say things like, it gives you a very honest perspective, or explore concepts. 13% of all utterances were related to emotional experiences. People would say there's a complete immersion into a blissful state of calming euphoria. Similarly, results from those who use 5-MeO-DMT as a spiritual sacrament revealed that 28% of all utterances were related to mystical and spiritual experiences. They would say it removes the veil between our perceived reality and ultimate reality. 11% of all utterances were related to cognitive experiences. They would say things like, my hypothesis of death became something more like an understanding. One person said, "It imbued me with confidence to look at my trauma and grief and heal it." 11% of all utterances were related to emotional experiences. People would say peace and tranquility, or a feeling connection to the love and beauty that surrounds us all. Although less often reported in both samples, other advantages of 5-MeO-DMT use reported by participants included the minimal side effects or come down, quick recovery, physical experiences such as very intensely pleasurable body high, and long-term benefits, including it has sustained psychological benefits, or people would say they were left with a sense of relief and love. This slide shows the themes created and the disadvantages results from both the general and the temple populations. So in the disadvantages section, 16% of all utterances were related to physical and sensory experiences. People would say it was almost an instant detachment from the body or out-of-body experiences, and they would say that as a drawback. 13% of all utterances were related to intensity of the experiences, with quotes like trip very intense or too intense for some, or onset can be overwhelming. 13% of all utterances were related to difficult emotional experiences, such as anxiety and panic, or scary onset, or scary if you can't let go. Of those who used 5-MeO-DMT as a spiritual sacrament and reported drawbacks associated with its use, 20% of all utterances were related to the need for preparation, guide, and integration, saying that there needs to be, quote, a person who is guiding the ceremony and people who are prepared, and that it should be taken with supervision. 9% of all utterances were related to cognitive experiences, such as extremely jarring, too much information / revelation to know what to do with. And 8% of all utterances were related to the intensity of the experience. For example, some said the experience was too vast and intense, an absolute and immediate abandon, and that there is an inability to regulate the intensity. Although less often reported in both samples, other drawbacks included potential dangers such as, quote, physical danger due to involuntary and unaware bodily movements, and, quote, could physically hurt themselves, and illegal. Other drawbacks were related to the duration of the journey, saying it doesn't last long and, quote, there are limitations on the length of the experience. People reported substance-related drawbacks, such as it's hard to access, more expensive than the other psychedelic substances, difficulties with dosing, and that was reported in both groups. Although it's difficult to draw conclusions between the two surveys, it's still fun to take a look. In comparing general and temple advantages, the mystical spiritual experiences theme contained the highest amount of utterances. It's interesting to think about what this might speak to or what this might mean within our culture today. Another interesting comparison gleaned from the advantages results had to do with the miscellaneous section, where 13% of all utterances in the general population were coded as miscellaneous, and 15% of all utterances in the temple population were coded as miscellaneous. What does miscellaneous mean? Yes. It means that the utterances pointed to a person or person's experience or experiences with 5 being advantageous. However, the utterances could not be coded under any other theme. Some miscellaneous examples from advantages included quotes such as, too numerous to list, as an advantage. Right? Shifting of stuck energy. Another person said, gets you there. Yeah. And it's a trip to fundamental reality. Also of interest, the miscellaneous theme in the temple population had the second highest percentage of utterances next to mystical and spiritual experiences. For the research team, this certainly speaks to the lack of language available to describe the ineffable. There were also some differences in the responses between the Temple and general surveys when considering the drawbacks of 5 compared to other psychedelics. This quote might sum it up best. If it's far and you can't read it, if one simply wants a delightful escape from the pressures of life, psychedelic substances are very poor choices. Psychological and spiritual growth is indeed serious and sometimes gut-wrenching business. That's from Bill Richards. Both the Temple and general respondents suggest one drawback to be that 5-MeO-DMT requires the need for more preparation, the need for a guide, and integration. It was difficult to tell from the responses if this was truly a drawback or if it was more like a warning. Many people responded as if they were giving advice. Is this because the Temple had more preparation, a stronger container with experienced guides? And what is meant by the miscellaneous category from the drawbacks data when it comes to the general population responses? Some of the responses included utterances involving concern for the toad populations. Other utterances were vague, such as has an unpleasant effect overall, and yet others were completely impossible to categorize when answering what drawbacks were experienced with the use of 5. One person said, the answer, and another said, fractal. In essence, words often fail. So what's next? Although there were some differences in the advantages and drawbacks of consuming 5-MeO-DMT reported between these two samples, taken together, these data suggest that 5-MeO-DMT produce powerful, intense, fast-acting, and short-lasting experiences which gave respondents a new and novel perspective on their relationship to their physical self, their spiritual life, and their understanding of the nature of reality. Despite some notable challenges reported by both samples, most respondents found the experience to be quite profound and informative. That said, many respondents shared some inherent challenges in the absence of preparation, support, and integration, which should be considered of primary importance, regardless of the setting in which it is consumed or the reasons for consumption. And with that, I would like to acknowledge and thank Alan Cooey-Davis for allowing me to be a part of the research team, and Joseph Barsuglia for creating and distributing the survey. To Alan again for recruiting us to be a part of the team, and to the team members, Brian Avila, Adrian Elizondo, Angela Ward, in addition to, and they're not listed here, Raphael Lancelota, Robert Grant, and Elise Wren. And the results of this survey will be published in the Journal of Psychopharmacology later this year. Thank you.
Could you give a couple of examples of the questions you asked? It sounded like they're pretty open-ended, just to give us kind of an idea.
The survey was really quite extensive and long, and what the research that I participated in coding just had to do with those two questions. What are the advantages of utilizing 5-MeO-DMT compared to other psychedelic substances? And then same with the drawbacks. So I do know that the survey was quite extensive, and that's all those two questions were the only that I coded.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.